Well, when you hear the word kindness, who comes to your mind? Maybe you could do this if you can think of a name, maybe somebody in your life, maybe somebody that you know, and just turn to the person next to you and tell them the name of the person that has been kind to you. For me, the name that comes to my mind, I have kind of three heroes of kindness. One is my father, who, for these fruits of the Spirit, he would often pray through in a year for a fruit to become real in his life. And as I watched him over the course of his life, that's one of the words, the word kindness, that describes him well. He will, and he probably still would if you asked him to today, play on his guitar an old song called Let Me Be a Little Kinder. And that's kind of been the prayer of his life. The second person that comes to my mind is someone that I don't know, but whose face I'm wearing on my socks today. And Mr. Rogers, to me, is one of the... I won't show you my socks. I don't know if that's appropriate. But Mr. Rogers, to me, is one of the people that has taken the concept of kindness. He was a Christian man, and of course the children's show, but also he prayed before he went on every show that there would be something that God's word would come through in his words. And so I thought maybe we'd just invite you to watch a little video clip, because we don't often see this kind of response. In 1997, Fred Rogers was given a Lifetime Achievement Award at the Emmy Awards. And sometimes, we can get cynical about celebrities. But I want you to watch this. It's just a couple minutes of how he responded. One of the kindest men that I think I know of in the public eye, how he responded when he received one of the greatest rewards that was able to be given to someone in the TV industry. So just take a look at this clip.
Ladies and gentlemen, the best neighbor any of us has ever had, Fred Rogers. For giving generation upon generation of children confidence in themselves, for being their friend, for telling them again and again and again that they are special and that they have worth. It is my honor, on behalf of everyone here and on behalf of the millions of children whose mornings you have brightened with your kindness, to present you with this Lifetime Achievement Award.
Oh, it's a beautiful night in this neighborhood. So many people have helped me to come to this night. Some of you are here, some are far away, some are even in heaven. All of us have special ones who have loved us into being. Would you just take, along with me, 10 seconds to think of the people who have helped you become who you are? Those who have cared about you and wanted what was best for you in life. 10 seconds of silence. I'll watch the time. whomever you've been thinking about, how pleased they must be to know the difference you feel they've made. You know, they're the kind of people television does well to offer our world. Special thanks to my family and friends and to my co-workers in public broadcasting, family communications, and this academy for encouraging me, allowing me all these years to be your neighbor. May God be with you. Thank you very much.
You know, kindness isn't often the thing that you get awards for. It often happens behind the scenes, and it often happens in interactions that nobody ever notices. And the best example of kindness is, of course, Jesus, who is kindness, the Bible says to us. And so far beyond my dad, and this is where he learned kindness from, and beyond Mr. Rogers, and because I know that Mr. Rogers learned kindness from Jesus, Jesus thought that kindness was so important that it framed lots of his speech to other people, but it also framed the way he understood himself, and perhaps his most famous story. And so I'm going to ask Fakir to come up and read to us from Luke chapter 10, and just hear it again for the first time, if you could. The story where Jesus shows us in a story what kindness is like.
Good morning. My name is Fakir, and I'm reading the parable of the Good Samaritan. On one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. "Teacher," he asked, "what must I do to inherit eternal life?" "What is written in the law?" he replied. "How do you read it?" He answered, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself." "You have answered correctly," Jesus replied. "Do this and you will live." But he wanted to justify himself, so he asked Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" In reply, Jesus said, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So too a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came to where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him, bandaged his wounds, pouring oil and wine. But then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. 'Look after him,' he said, 'and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have.' Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers?" The expert in the law replied, "The one who had mercy on him." Jesus told them, "Go and do likewise."
Yeah, thanks, Fakir. Well, as I was thinking about sharing on this topic, you can tell me later if it worked or not, but I thought I want to be as practical as possible, because kindness could be defined in this way, and this is the definition I will use this morning, is that kindness is love expressed in action. That kindness is not a feeling that you feel for somebody, not an emotion. You might have all sorts of things that you think are kind feelings towards somebody, but if you don't ever act in a kind way, you're not kind, because kind is something that you do. It's an activity, it's an event, it's an action. And this is so important to God that he describes himself as kind, and Jesus tells this story to show us what it means to be kind. So we'll walk through the story and notice a few things, and then consider how we too can be a people of kindness. So the story is simple, you know it. There is a priest, a Levite, and a Samaritan, and they all encounter this crime scene on the way from Jericho down to Jerusalem. The road is steep and windy. Some of us were there about a year ago. And each of the 3 people in this story, I will suggest today that they represent an attitude an attitude that any of us can have towards other people. And it's not like you might have one attitude and you have a different, you have attitude number two. I'll suggest to you today that all of us have all of these attitudes at certain times. In fact, throughout your day, you may have all three of these at any given moment. And I would just want to encourage you as we come to this topic that rather than thinking of someone else who needs to be kind, that you could just kind of hold up a mirror to yourself and just see where you're at today. So the first guy is the priest. So the priest kind of has this attitude. He avoids other people. There was a man who was going down from Jerusalem. The robbers attacked him. It so happened that a priest was going down the same road, but when he saw the man who was in pain, he walked by on the other side. So this is the attitude of avoidance. This is, instead of helping the guy, he just goes over to the other side of the road, just keeps on walking. Out of sight, out of mind. If I ignore it, I don't have to do anything about it. As long as I don't pay attention, I'm not responsible. This is the idea that you don't want to get too close to people, because if you get close to people, then you might have to help them or bear some of their pain that they're in. This would be the attitude that kind of keeps relationships at a shallow level. You don't want to talk with people too long. You don't want to dig too deep in their life. You don't want to get too involved in your neighbor's world or your friend's world. You just want to keep relationships official. Or sometimes we'll say, keep it professional. And if you do that, then you don't have to really get involved. Because if you get too close, then you might have to help them. So stick to your own business. Now that way, you don't have to bear the world of hurt for the people around you. And just stay distracted, stay out of it. Anybody feel like this once in a while? I feel like this once in a while. In fact, in cities, I think we actually, in our world today, it's actually increasingly easy to avoid people. Have you noticed that? Like, I can go months without seeing or talking to my neighbors. And you know why? It's because I have an automatic garage door opener. And I just click that thing, drive my car in, click it again, don't have to see anybody, don't have to talk to anybody, and as long as I put my garbage out at a different time than them, I can completely avoid them. Now, this is the world that we live in, and oftentimes we don't recognize that people are hurting around us because we just don't see them. And so if it's been a long time since you were downtown and you saw some people in poverty, it's easy to pretend that they aren't even there. It's easy to literally go down the other side of the road and not travel past people that might need help or that you might have to be kind to. This happens with people. We have what we call old folks' homes. We have centers for certain types of people so that the rest of us can just walk by on the side of the road. The second guy, so that's the first guy, is the priest. The second guy is the Levite. Levite's got a little bit different kind of an approach. This is where it's not so much that he's avoiding. He actually goes a little bit further, but he does something even worse. He actually has apathy. It says the same way the Levite also came. He went over and looked at the man. Then he walked on the other side. So this guy is curious, checks it out. Ooh, that's awful. And then he walks on. I see the needs of people around me. I'm not oblivious to them. I'm just too self-centered to help. I'm aware and I stare. I just don't care. And so this is what this guy does. Now, I worked on this for a little while. A Levite is not a jean salesman. Thank you. All of you dads, little dad joke. What he is an assistant. He's a temple assistant. So he's a guy that helps around the temple, and he sees the guy over there, naked, bleeding, almost dead, walks over, stares at him. He's curious, but he doesn't care. He doesn't help. It reminds me of, I've been driving to Edmonton area the last few weeks, and there's always seems to be an accident on that highway. And if you've driven it, you know why. It's kind of a crazy highway. And what happens is the accident often gets moved over to the side, but the traffic still takes forever to get past, even though there's still 2 lanes left. Why is that? That's because everyone is doing exactly this: slowing down, looking, craning your neck out to see what happened. You're curious, but you don't do anything. We call them rubberneckers. You do this because you don't stop, but you're well aware of it. In fact, there's an entire industry in our world that is built upon the fact that we like to be curious about other people's pain without having to do anything about it. Why else would we be so fascinated with celebrities and the things that they are going through and all of the stuff that we love to read about the pain of other people? We just don't want to help them with it. And social media and so forth make that very easy. Man, that guy's got such problems. Oh, she's a mess. I mean, their relationship is clearly not this. They could do so much better. They just seem to have all of these problems. Where you can actually be aware of things that are happening without having to do anything about it. Apathy. And then, of course, the third option is the Good Samaritan. Now, most of you would know, I like this translation that actually says, despised Samaritan, because Jesus was talking to Jewish people. Jewish people hated Samaritan people. They had long generations of hatred towards the Samaritans. And the Samaritan, of course, shows us this word kindness. But notice what he does. He does a whole bunch of things. He saw the man, and when he saw him, he felt compassion. And then, going over to him, he soothed the wounds with olive oil and wine. He bandaged them. He put the man on his donkey. He took him to an inn. He took care of him. And then he handed the innkeeper some money, telling him, take care of this guy. If the bill runs out higher than this, I'll pay you the next time I'm here. So he did a whole bunch of things. And that, Jesus is showing us, is the man who showed mercy, or you could use that word mercy. In Luke chapter 10, you could insert the word kindness. So I'll just want to suggest to you a few things this morning, hopefully very practical things that you could do as you think about what it means to be a kind person. And here's what we learn from this story. One is that to be kind, I have to see the needs of those around me. Here's what the Samaritan did. He saw the man's condition. Your capacity to be kind depends upon your vision. It really depends on what you're looking for. You could put it this way. Love begins with looking. Or you can't care until you're aware of what's going on. You have to start noticing. Or kindness, you could say, begins with your eyes. What do you see? What do you see? Because wounded people are all around us all the time. Isn't that true? They're around you right now. I don't know everything about the people in your row, but I think I can say with complete confidence that there are people on your row that are deeply wounded. You say, how can you say that, Steve? Well, because I think everyone, particularly of a certain age, which is probably pretty young, carries with them wounds. It could be emotional, could be trauma, could be financial or relational or spiritual wounds, mental wounds, physical wounds, wounds from other people in their life. Everybody is wounded in a different area, but you have to start seeing it if you want to be kind. You have to take a look and notice it. Now, you say, well, why don't I notice the wounds of the people around me? Well, if you dig under that a little bit, I think there's two reasons. One is, all of us are hiding them. Isn't that true? And lots of us are really good at it, right? I know some people who, I didn't know for like 15 years. Part of it was my eyesight wasn't clear. They just acted as if there was no wounds in their life. Have you met people like that? People who, this morning, some of us, we carry the wound of grief. It could be the grief of somebody we loved or the grief of an expectation that didn't get met or died. There's people in your row probably that have the wound of loneliness who are hiding it. And what a thing to be in a group of people this large and to still feel lonely. There's people here that are hiding their depression and their pain, their wounds. Everybody is hiding, so you're not going to see it unless you're looking for it. But the other reason is that you can't see it. One is that we're all trying to hide it probably. But the second reason is that we're all in a hurry. And hurry, and here's where I stop preaching to us all and just talk to myself for a minute. Hurry is the death of kindness. I think that. When you slow down, then you can be kind. I wonder if that's why Fred Rogers talks so slowly. The slower you go, the more that you see. Isn't that true? If I was to take my kids to Reno and Lido or in Montreal, let's say we're going to Montreal. If I wanted them to see Canada and head over there, if I was going to fly them to Montreal, they would not see much of Canada, would they? You say, well, I'm actually, no, I want them to see more of Canada, so I'm going to take the train to Montreal. Well, then you'd see a little bit more, wouldn't you? And I say, well, I still want them to see more of Canada, so let's take a car. Let's drive to Montreal, just a little bit slower. Well, then they would see a lot of Canada. But if I'm like, no, I want you to see even more, I say, let's get our bikes. We're biking to Montreal. Then we would see a lot of Canada. You see where I'm going with this? But if I really wanted them to see Canada and enjoy the prairies, we're walking. Get your shoes, son, because we want to see this country. The slower you go, the more that you see. That's really one of the big dangers of rushing. And so maybe you could do this. Maybe one of the first steps for us to be a kind people is to just pray, God, give me spiritual radar to see the people around me, to be on the lookout for the person in need. I mean, if I was going past the guy that got beat up, generally I'm going too fast to look that far over to the side of the road. I just got my eyes on what's ahead of me. And so we have to slow down to see the needs of those around us. I have a friend who prays this prayer in the morning. He prays, God, show me my day. And he does this as a way of just saying, God, I got a list of things on my day to do, but show me, open my eyes to see how you see this day and what can be done and who can I meet and who can I love. It's a great prayer. You might try it. The second thing we see in this story is that if we are going to be a people of kindness, you're going to have to sympathize with the pain of those around me. Notice he sees the man's condition, and then his heart was filled with compassion. With compassion. Now, this is a little bit different because lots of times when I see people and I can see their need, I don't look at them long enough to have compassion. I look at them just long enough to think, well, how can I fix that for them? But that's not compassion. That's missing an important piece of kindness. You say, well, how do I get to be a sympathetic person? How do I engage myself with the people who are hurting around me? And the way that you do it, if you start by using your eyes, this part requires your ears. How do I do that? Here it is. Listen better. I think compassion is tied to our ability to hear. You see with your eyes, but you sympathize with your ears. You can actually, studies have actually proven this, you can actually heal people, both physically, emotionally, mentally, whatever their struggles are. You can actually heal people simply by listening to them. I don't know if you knew that before. But some people, all they need is a listening ear. They don't need advice. They just need attention. Sometimes love is listening. And here's the thing, and I don't want to, I used to think that this was kind of a man thing, but I think that it's actually, we're all equally able to do this. A lot of us would rather give advice than listen. Isn't that true? I know most of the time I would. I would rather fix your problem than listen to you go on and on about it. But advice is cheap. And for most of us, that's not what we need. That's not what we need. You actually probably don't need advice. You're not helpless. You're discouraged. You're faltering, but you're not helpless. Almost everybody you know would benefit if you would just listen to them. Listen. And when you listen, what you discover is that will engage your heart. You'll be able to feel and sympathize with them. And one of the reasons we don't sympathize with people is because we don't look at we don't look at where they come from. We just look at how far they have to go. Have you ever done this? Where you think of the people in your life and you know what they could be. You know who they could be. You know what's wrong with them, and you know where they could be, and you'd like to get them there. But what you forget to do is to understand how far they've come. Probably the people who irritate you the most at work, at school, maybe even in your row, the people who irritate you most are the people that you have the hardest time getting along with. It's probably because you are asking the wrong question. Oftentimes we look at how far people still have to go, but we don't give them credit for how far they've come. And we judge them maybe on where we are on the continuum rather than where they were and how far that they've come. And because of that, you don't understand what it means to walk in their shoes. You don't give them credit for where they are. You just think about, where they should be. You don't know the trauma that they've been through. You don't know the hard situation they grew up with. You don't know the pain that they're carrying right now, today. You're just thinking about how far you wish that they would go to get where you want them to be. Isn't that true? Man, I've done this a lot. I had I guess kind of a friend, though I don't know that I'd call him that. For years, all that he was to me was, you know how Paul talks about like the thorn? This guy was my thorn. Like, I don't know if God gave him to me or not, but he drove me nuts. Like, he was in the church, and I knew that as soon as I was done speaking, I'd, sort of step off the stage or get out behind the pulpit. He would be right there and telling me exactly what I had said that was wrong and not right, and on and on and on, and emails and all this kind of thing. And somebody gave me this advice, and I'm not sure it was good advice, but I tried it. They said, stay close to your enemies. So I was early in pastoring, so I thought, okay, I'm going to go for lunch with this guy. Every week, I'm going to stay close to him. Well, that just made it worse. That was like an infection on a wound, man. Like, every time it's like, Until the day, I don't know how we got to this conversation. I asked him something about growing up. And he got this look on his face. And he said, well, I grew up on a farm in Saskatchewan. And I said, oh, so you worked with your dad, you worked on the farm? He said, no, actually, he said, my dad didn't like the way that I worked. And so he would take a rope and he would tie me to a tree while he went off and worked during the day. He said, I spent most of my life just in one little area. And all of a sudden, I could never see him the same again. It's like he just had his wound was open to me, and I thought, man, you've come a long ways. You're still irritating, but now I get it. And what it did is, it enabled me to choose the option of kindness. It was a lot easier to be kind. Paul put it like this way. He said these three things. He says, here's things you can be thankful for. He says, you can be thankful that you're not who you used to be. Praise God. You can be thankful for who you are today. There's so many good things that God has given you today. And you can be thankful that you're not yet who you're going to be. And that's true for all of us. And all of us are in these three stages. And the kindness of God means when we share it with other people that we love and accept people and respect them at all three stages. Man, you've come from, looking at where you were to where you are now, wow. And look at all these fantastic things right now. And wow, can't wait to see what's next for you. So another way to put it is this. If you want to be kind, stop asking of other people, or stop thinking in your mind when you think of other people, what is wrong with them? Instead, try this. Ask this. What happened to them? What happened to them? Because there's a reason that they're behaving like that and acting like that. What happened to them? And you will be kinder when you discover it, when you see what they've been through. Because everybody's got brokenness in their lives, and the question is not what's wrong with you. It doesn't take a genius to articulate that, thank you very much. The question is, what happened to you? And when you understand that, then you are able to cut people slack. Then it's so much easier to give grace. Sympathizing with the pain of those around me. Thirdly, and this will be the last one, here's what the Samaritan did. Seize the moment to help. The principle of spontaneity, like don't delay, don't procrastinate, do what you can. Kindness is not something you wait to feel. Oh, I feel kind. No, kindness is something that you do. It's something that happens, that it is an event. Going over to him. He went over and he did all of those things. He bandaged them. He poured oil and wine. He did all of this stuff because he acted on the need of the person that was right in front of him. To me, this says a few things. One is that if we're going to do that, we're going to take the initiative. So there's somebody in your life right now that you need to be kind to. You know the wounds that they have. You know the struggles that they have. You know the needs that they have. This means that you take initiative. You don't wait for somebody else to come and help. This guy does it on his own. He doesn't wait for the neighbor to help. He doesn't call 911. He actually goes and helps right then as he is. He goes. Whew. To me, this is a challenging one because my bias is actually to think about things for a bit first. I would like to analyze the story that you've been through and your needs, and I'd like to ponder them, and I may even like to call in some experts to give you some advice on them. Whereas kindness acts on it. I remember one time I was in India, and we were in a bus after a big event, and we were driving, and two buses were going side by side, and the windows were open in the bus, and a little girl put her head out the bus, and the other bus hit her, knocked her through the window onto the ground. And I was just stunned. I thought, what just happened? And I didn't even know what to do. I just kind of just sat there. And, there's all these people and all this stuff happened, and I thought, oh, somebody ought to help this girl. What I didn't realize is that the person sitting next to me, Dave Patterson, had already jumped up. He'd gone out the back of the bus. He was already there, had the girl in his arms, and was taking her over to the police at that moment. And I thought, that's what I want to be like. Taking the initiative, not waiting. Second thing that this guy does is that he uses what he has. And what he had was oil and wine, which to me, when I read the Good Samaritan, I'm like, the guy had his lunch with him. That was his salad dressing. That's what I'm thinking. Like, he doesn't have a first aid kit, so what does he do? He uses his lunch. He uses what he's got. It's pretty good because wine is alcohol. Alcohol is cleansing. Oil, he's got oil. It's soothing, so he's disinfecting. He's soothing the wound. It's a pretty good thing. So he's using whatever he's got. He's got his lunch. He's got the Caesar salad dressing on the guy's thigh, putting the lettuce on as a pack. I don't know what he's doing for this guy, but he's using whatever he's got. He's bandaging up, and I guarantee you he didn't have a bunch of bandages or a first aid kit. He probably had his shirt that he tore into strips or a tunic that he tore into strips to wrap the bandage on this guy and put it back together. He's not waiting for a professional. He's not sending in a text that says, hey, go and talk to this person. He's using what he's got. And friends, you've got it. If someone comes into your life that needs help, it's probably not an accident. You have more than you think to help them. This guy used whatever he had, which to me brings us to kind of the third thing. The main thing that this guy had is he had time. And if we're going to be kind, we're going to have to be open to interruptions because it's inconvenient. One of the things in the last month or so, I have an assistant helping me with some administrative things. And so she's been putting my schedule together supposed to give me like a list of all the things that I'm supposed to do during the day. The problem is we discovered very quickly after we made this wonderful list of all the things that should happen during a day, just how little of that gets done because life is full of interruptions. And I realized that I had scheduled my life so full that I didn't have time for anybody to interrupt me. But the problem is that one of the most fascinating things about Jesus is not, and we talk about walking in the steps of Jesus, but if you really want to be interested in what Jesus did, notice not the steps of Jesus, notice the stops of Jesus. He stops all the time. He's interrupted constantly. And that's where the things happen. And so the priest just walks by because he's in a rush. But these interruptions actually become divine encounters. So I can guarantee you today, I think I can say with confidence, that God is going to put somebody painful in your life, and it's not an accident. Maybe they're already there. I think it's maybe more of like a test. Because what kindness requires is that you're able to see the world that someone else lives into, and you're willing to step into that world to help them. But you have to have the time. And if God has given you a difficult person or people in your life that seem very needy, I want to just suggest the possibility that has been a gift to you so that you can grow and be more like Him, and you can rely on the Holy Spirit to give you the gift of kindness, that He will put people intentionally in your path. Because the miracles of Jesus are often not just miracles because He healed somebody. Often they're because He touched somebody who needed healing. But even more than that, often the miracle is that the Son of God, on the way to save the world from the sins of the world, was willing to stop to help somebody in pain. So kindness is something that requires spontaneity. So if you hear of somebody who lost a loved one, call them right now. If somebody that you know got fired or lost their job, connect with them now. If you have someone in your life that has heard the word cancer, be there for them now. If someone's having a hard time or their hearts are broken or they've failed at something, and go and be there right now. You say, Steve, but I don't know what I would say. Here's the thing that I think as a pastor is solid advice for all of us. The greater the pain, the less you talk. The less you talk. If you're around people that are in pain, it's not the words that you say. It's that you are there, that you are present, that you are with them. And the more tragic the thing is, the more that you just need to be quiet and be there with them. Well, at the end of this story, Jesus, the guy is still there, and Jesus asks him a question. He says this, now which of these three would you say was the neighbor to the man who was attacked by bandits? And Jesus asked. And the man replied, the one who showed him kindness. And Jesus said, okay, now go and do the same. So here's my challenge to us, church, this week. Go and do the same. Who do you need to be kind to this week? And here's the challenge that I have for you this morning. Think of one person that you see every week who is not a believer in Jesus. Think of them. You see them every week, but they're not only not here this morning, maybe they're not interested in being here. Most of us have at least one. And here's what I'd like you to do. Whoever the Lord has brought to your mind, I want you to start to be intentionally kind to that person. And if you don't know what their pain is, or you don't know what their wound is, then you've got some learning to do and some listening to do. But just somebody who does not know the Lord, somebody you see every week, just be intentionally kind. Could you do that? I think that's what the world needs now. It needs people who depend on the Spirit of God to let the kindness of God flow through them towards others. You say, and why would I do this, Steve? You would do this because God has been kind to you. This is how we read of God's kindness. It says that God saved you through faith as an act of kindness. The coming of Jesus is spoken of as kindness. That God's kindness leads us to change our mind and to repent. That it's God's kindness that enabled Jesus to come to this earth, to die on a cross, so that you may be saved. And because when you see that, when you see how God has been kind to you, you will have the ability to be kind to others, because you won't see them the same either.